While some may see autumn as solely the start of the dying of the year, many look forward to this season of harvest and bounty for gathering with family and friends, or quiet reflection and preparation for the cold months of winter. My favorite aspect of autumn is this duality. While the tomato plants wither and rot, the winter squashes flourish and ripen. The bright greens of summer fade away, and the jewel tones of red, orange, yellow, and purple paint the mountains that surround us. Autumn is my favorite season of the year, and I hope this selection sparks at least a small feeling of appreciation in your heart for this time of harvest, reflection, and balance. As with the spring poetry, there will be a pause between poems for quiet reflection. We'll begin with two poems read by Ira Shaleff.
Thank you, Tara. I wanted to make sure there was an African-American voice in our selection. And I found a poem on autumn from Paul Laurence Dunbar. And it was written around 1900, give or take a couple of years. I'm going to put it up on my screen so I can read it from there. This is called Merry Autumn. It's all a farce, these tales they tell about the breezes sighing and moans astir o'er field and dell because the year is dying. Such principles are most absurd. I care not who first taught them. There's nothing known to beast or bird to make a solemn autumn. In solemn times, when grief holds sway, with countenance distressing, you'll note the more of black and gray will then be used in dressing. Now, purple tints are all around. The sky is blue and mellow, and in the grasses turn the ground from modest green to yellow. The seed burrs, all with laughter, crack on featherweed and jimson, and leaves that should be dressed in black are all decked out in crimson. A butterfly goes winging by, a singing bird comes after, and nature, all from earth to sky, is bubbling o'er with laughter. The ripples wimple on the rills like sparkling little lasses. The sunlight runs along the hills and laughs among the grasses. The earth is just so full of fun, it really can't contain it. And streams of mirth so freely run, the heavens seem to rain it. Don't talk to me of solemn days in autumn's time of splendor, because the sun shows fewer rays and these grow slant and slender. Why, it's the climax of the year, the highest time of living, till naturally its bursting cheer just melts into Thanksgiving. I did a little research on this man whom I didn't know, and to my shame, I didn't know. As it turns out, he was probably the first African-American poet of national and international standing. He was born in 1872. Think about that. That's 7 years after the end of the Civil War, 9 years after emancipation. He was born, his mother came from Kentucky and she moved to Ohio. And they were very poor, so he couldn't get a formal education, but he had a talent for poetry, began writing when he was very young, began getting published. Some mentors identified his talent and gave him a lift up, and he wound up publishing several books of poetry, wrote 4 novels, several books of collected short stories, and even the score for an African-American musical that played on Broadway. So this was a really, really talented man. And one of the things that was so interesting about his poetry was he could write in multiple dialects. He could write in what we think of as standard English, which is what you just heard, but he could also write in the Southern African dialect that his family was raised in. And he also apparently could write in a Midwestern dialect. So this is quite a talent to have these different voices. So in my research, I found one more poem he wrote that is considered his most famous poem. And all this body of work, tragically, he died when he was 33 years old. Um, but this very short poem I'm going to read, it's not exactly about autumn, but it is about masks. And with Tara's consent, I shoehorned it into this theme because we put on masks at Halloween. But this is a mask, this speaks of the mask that African American people have had to wear for much of their lives. It's called We Wear the Mask, Paul Laurence Dunbar. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile, with torn and bleeding hearts, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing out, but on the clay is vile beneath our feet, and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask.
Thank you, Ira. I I it it wasn't totally in with the theme, but I felt like it when you sent it to me, it just it it belonged. um, before I begin, I do want to point out that I was intentional in picking out African American voices, women's voices, and LGBTQ voices when I was selecting my poetry. So I think I'll probably put titles and authors in the newsletter so that everyone can kind of peruse and learn about. But the next selection is September Tomatoes by Karina Borowicz. The whiskey stink of rot has settled in the garden, and a burst of fruit flies rises when I touch the dying tomato plants. Still, the claws of tiny yellow blossoms flail in the air as I pull the vines up by the roots and toss them in the compost. It feels cruel. Something in me isn't ready to let go of summer so easily, to destroy what I've carefully cultivated all these months. Those pale flowers might still have time to fruit. My great-grandmother sang with the girls of her village as they pulled the flax, songs so old and so tied to the season that the very sound seemed to turn the weather.
The next one is a poem by Emily Bronte. Emily Bronte wrote in the first half of the 19th century, so pre-Civil War, lived in England, and is most famous for her novel Wuthering Heights. This poem, she also wrote a considerable amount of poetry. This poem, Fall Leaves Fall, is from my reading, a bit angry and maybe sarcastic. Fall, leaves fall, die, flowers away. lengthen night and shorten day. Every leaf speaks bliss to me, fluttering from the autumn tree. I shall smile when wreaths of snow blossom where the rose should grow. I shall sing when night's decay ushers in a drearier day.
September by Helen Hunt Jackson. The goldenrod is yellow, the corn is turning brown, the trees and apple orchards with fruit are bending down. The gentian's glorious fringes are glowing in the sun, in dusty pods the milkweed its hidden silk has spun. The sedges front their harvests in every meadow nook, and asters by the brookside make asters in the brook. From dewy lanes at morning at the grapes, sweet odors rise at noon. The butter roads all flutter with yellow butterflies. By all these lovely tokens, September days are here, with summer's best of weather and autumn's best of clear. But none of all this beauty which floods the earth and the air is unto me the secret which makes September fair. Tea is a thing which I remember to name, it thrills me yet. One day of September I can never forget.
Sonnet number 73, William Shakespeare. That time of year thou mayest in me behold when yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs, where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away. Death's second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong. Of that well, which thou must leave ere long.
First Fall by Maggie Smith. I'm your guide here in the evening dark morning streets. I point and name. Look, the sycamores, their mottled paint by number bark. Look, the leaves, rustling and crisping at the edges. I walk through Schiller Park with you on my chest. Stars smolder well into daylight. Look, the pond, the ducks, the dogs paddling after their prized sticks. Fall is when the only things you know, because I've named them, begin to end. Soon I'll have another season to offer you. Frost soft on the window and a porthole side there. ice sleeving the bare gray branches. The first time you see something die, you won't know it might come back. I'm desperate for you to love the world because I brought you here.
In the poem Porch Swing in September by Richard Kuzer, we have another carefully constructed word picture. What do you make of the final surprising image in which each dewdrop the spider brushes from her web becomes a world? The porch swing hangs fixed in a morning sun that bleaches its gray slats, its flowered cushion, whose flowers have faded like those of summer. And a small brown spider has hung out her web on a line between the porch post and chain, so that no one may swing without breaking it. She is saying it's time that the swinging were done with. Time that the creaking and pinging and popping that sang through the ceiling were past. Time now for the soft vibrations of moths, the wasp tapping each board for an entrance, the cool dewdrops to brush from her work every morning, one world at a time.
To Autumn by one of our mainstays, John Keats. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. When barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue, then in wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river shallows borne aloft, or sinking as the light wind lives and dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, now with terrible soft, the red-breast whistles from the garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies.
Next poem is by Christine Beauvaquis. She's a contemporary poet in Northern California, much awarded, and A Season Turns by Christine Beauvaquis. To walk out in the morning is a fine thing, gold on the cosmos, and the sun's quiver on rows of tall tasseled corn left for October. The stalks sing, brushed by a breeze that moves the dry grass into chorus. The rustling hinge of the garden gate creaks a cricket song, and leaves turn red on a lean orchard tree as you reach for summer's last plum.
This next one is Pleasant Sounds by John Clare, and it really is a list of my favorite sounds, so I felt like I needed to include it. The rustling of leaves under the feet in woods and under hedges, the crumpling of cat ice and snow down wood rides, narrow lanes in every street causeway, rustling through a wood, or rather rushing, while the wind halloos in the oak top like thunder. The rustle of birds' wings startled from their nests or flying unseen into the bushes. the whizzing of larger birds overhead in a wood, such as crows, puttocks, buzzards, the trample of robins and woodlarks on the brown leaves, and the patter of squirrels on the green moss, the fall of an acorn on the ground, the pattering of nuts on the hazel branches as they fall from ripeness, the flirt of the ground lark's wings from the stubbles. How sweet such pictures on dewy mornings when the dew flashes from its brown feathers.
October by Marie Howe. The first cold morning, the little pumpkins lined up at the corner market, and the girl walks along Hudson Street to school and doesn't look back. The old sorrow blows in with the scent of wood smoke as I walk up the 5 flights to our apartment and lean hard against the broken dishwasher so it will run. Then it comes to me. Yes, I'll die. So will everyone. So has everyone. It's what we have in common. And for a moment, the sorrow ceased, and I saw that it hadn't been sorrow after all, but loneliness. And for a few moments, it has gone.
A little red apple.
And go.
And goes. A little red apple hung high in a tree. I looked up at it, and it looked down at me. Come down, please, I called. And what do you suppose? That little red apple dropped right on my nose.
This poem was written in 2013 and it won a prize by a friend of mine, Lucille Blanchard, who published her first book when she was 70. It was called On Turning 70. Another when she turned 80. She was a disciplined writer who rose early each day for the pleasure of a quiet, uninterrupted hour dedicated to writing. She died 4 years ago, a victim of Alzheimer's. In her memory, I read to you As the World Turns. Of frost shrinks back across the green grass as the sun climbs above the trees. Its brightness licks the crystals like a child with a popsicle. The warm lake breathes upward. A silver mist hovers while trees, some yellowed, lean over the jagged bank to meet a perfect image in still water. Their long bones undressed, leaf by leaf. All I hear in the woods are leaves dropping, the soft patter of seconds used up. I haul my long bones along the forest path, bones no longer clothed in supple flesh. Like linen, my skin holds its creases now, witness to years of use. Geese Clear the field of corn dropped by the harvester, then rise on creaking wings. A loose skein stitching autumn into the sky.
Autumn Fire by Robert Louis Stevenson. In the other gardens and all up in the vale, from the autumn bonfires, see the smoke trail. Pleasant summer over and all the summer flowers. The red fire blazes, the gray smoke towers. Sing a song of seasons, something bright in all. Flowers in the summer, fires in the fall.
Something Told the Wild Geese by Rachel Field. Something told the wild geese it was time to go. Though the fields lay golden, something whispered, snow. Leaves were green and stirring, berries luster glossed, but beneath warm feathers, something cautioned, frost. All the sagging orchards steamed with amber spice, but each wild breast stiffened at remembered ice. Something told the wild geese it was time to fly. Summer sun was on their wings, winter in their cry.
This next poem is by Rita Dove. Tara, do you have any tidbits to share about the author? Put you on the spot.
I know. I do not. I do remember reading her bio and just loving it.
She was a poet laureate at one point, a U.S. poet laureate, an African American woman.
Thank you, Madeline.
This is called November for Beginners. Snow would be the easy way out, that softening sky like a sigh of relief at finally being allowed to yield. No dice. We stack twigs for burning in glistening patches, but the rain won't give. So we wait, breeding mood, making music of decline. We sit down in the smell of the past and rise in the light that was already leaving. We ache in secret, memorizing a gloomy line or two in German. When spring comes, we promise to act the fool. Pour rain, sail wind with your cargo of zithers.
Song for Autumn by Mary Oliver. In the deep fall, don't you imagine the leaves think how comfortable it will be to touch the earth instead of the nothingness of air and the endless freshets of wind? And don't you think the trees themselves, especially those with mossy, warm caves, begin to think of the birds that will come, 6, a dozen, to sleep inside their bodies? And don't you hear the goldenrod whispering goodbye, the everlasting being crowned with the first tuffets of snow? The pond vanishes and the white field over which the fox runs so quickly brings out its blue shadows, and the wind pumps its bellows. And at evening especially, the piled firewood shifts a little, longing to be on its way.
Thank you so much to everyone for reading. We do have a couple minutes, so if anyone has any thoughts or plans with the arrival of fall or a favorite fall poem that you'd like to share, we have about maybe 5 minutes.
I have in front of me the words to the song that was sung at by all of us who were singing in the choir at my husband's memorial service. It's called In Remembrance, and I think it has applications to fall and the turning of the clock and the ending of the season. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not light. I am the sunlight, sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle, gentle, gentle morning rain. And when you wake in the morning's hush, I am the sweet, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there, I did not die.
And now we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. And I'm going to end with closing words for seasonal transitions by Andrew Pula. May you know how fully and deeply the blessings of each of your heart seasons, the inward turning of winter, springtime's lush renewal, the effortless, steady growth of summer, and autumn's rich harvest. May your passage from season to season be blessed, eased by hands to hold, and by the light of love to guide you on.